Hello everyone, it's Maha. Thank you so much for joining me once again here on my channel. And for today's video, I wanted to do something a little bit different. I was inspired by Megs from the Woodland Hag, where sometime recently, she posted a video where she shared some of the books that she's reading, and in that video she talked mostly about guidebooks from different oracle decks that she's reading. And I thought, what a great thing to do is to just actually, in a way, pay respect to the guidebooks. To me, the guidebooks in the decks that I own are really, they've been a huge part of my work with the decks. Ideally, when I purchase a deck, I like to resonate with the artwork and also feel that I can learn something from the guidebook, that I can enjoy reading the guidebook, because I love books in general, and of course I love artwork, but I'm not the kind of person who just gets decks and then puts the guidebook away. To me, guidebooks are just really, they are a huge part of my working process with the deck. So when I watched Megs' video, I thought, I'm going to do the same. I'm going to talk about some of the guidebooks I'm reading, because the guidebooks are like actual books to me. I have books that I'm reading, and then I also have guidebooks that I treat them like books. And I liked the fact that Megs was treating these guidebooks as books in themselves. So I have some guidebooks here to share with you that I'm recently reading, and of course working with the decks, the images, the cards themselves as well. And I also have one actual book, so not a guidebook, but a book that I wanted to share with you as well in this video. So I'm going to start with the guidebooks. And the first one is this little one here from Greek mythology reading cards. And don't be fooled by the size of this book. It is a very profound, well-written little book. And there are, I can't remember how many cards in here, definitely 44 or more. And every god or goddess here, it has been, there's only a few paragraphs about each one, but the paragraphs are just summarized so clearly in a simple yet intricate way. And the author has given a lot of attention to the artwork, to the images, and has given annotations of where the images are coming from. So this book is by Alison Chester Lambert, illustrations by Richard Crooks. So Richard Crooks, the artist, has taken images from art history and sort of changed them and made them his own. But what I love is that he's given credit, a lot of credit, to the actual artworks where he was inspired by. And at the end of the guidebook, you see the artist's name and where the paintings are located, so which museum in the world they're from. And I really respect that, because as somebody who studied art and art history, I've seen too many times, and I'm going to say this because it's important to me, too often I've seen decks where, not all of them, but I have seen quite a few decks, and I own a couple of them, that have featured art from art history, yet they haven't given credit to the artist. And they haven't even, published a book where you can find the name of the artist, the medium, or the date where it was made, where it can be found, what gallery it's located in. I think that's so important, because, these are artists that were alive at some point. And I feel that, in a way, it's plagiarism if we don't give them credit. And I still don't really understand how one can get away with selling a product and not giving credit to the artist. And since I have a voice here, I need to express that, because that's a very important thing for me. It's a concern for me when that happens, when I see that. When I see that in guidebooks, all you find is interpretations of the cards, yet nothing about the artist. And that really needs to be addressed, because I think artists in general are not given enough credit. That's just my opinion. So I like to just point that out. But anyway, the book itself is amazing, because even though it's a little book, it's really packed with actual myths and also the interpretations of the myth and how that can apply to daily life. So I think it's really beautifully written, and I'm really enjoying reading this guidebook. And I think that if you are a beginner to Greek mythology, it's ideal, because it doesn't get too complicated. There are other decks that get into Greek mythology in more detail. This one is more, I guess, basic, but at the same time, not watered down. So I'm really enjoying this book. The next one is the Herbcrafter Tarot Guidebook. And this one is another book that's not too thick, yet it's packed with wisdom, with insights, with information. This is an amazing deck. Some of my friends here on YouTube have told me that they're not sure if they can work with this deck because of the images. I think they felt that maybe they were too abstract, or maybe they wouldn't connect or be able to read with them easily. For me, the reason why I love this deck and this guidebook is because I'm learning a lot. That's always the number one important thing for me when it comes to things, is how much am I learning? What am I learning? And I love learning about herbs, and I love the herbal tarot, and I love how that's got astrological correspondences and properties of herbs. And when I first got this deck, I thought that it would be similar in that the category of herbs would be connected to the meaning of the cards, according to their healing properties and therapeutic properties, But it's a little bit different. The way this deck is organized is a little bit different, and I find it exquisite. The way it's structured is just so sophisticated. I love how each of the cards in the major arcana, the court cards, and the minor arcana are organized according to not just their therapeutic properties of the herbs, but like a story that unfolds as the fool, who in this case is the herbcrafter, goes through her gardening and creating a garden, cultivating the herbs, and there's a lot of attention given to sustainability and to cultivating the herbs in a sustainable way. I haven't really, obviously I just started working with this quite recently, so I haven't read the whole book, but I'm finding that it's just, I actually didn't know how sophisticated the structure of this deck is, and I'm really enjoying learning about the herbs themselves and how they are in our environment and how they are in our ecosystem, the roles they play, and not just their therapeutic properties. So for the minor arcana, for example, she's taken Letitia Guthrie. She's taken the herbs and categorized them according to how we cultivate them and how we get healing from them. So for example, the suit of cups refers or corresponds to herbs that are for healing and nurturing, and that they are taken generally as herbal teas, or in relation to water. So teas, the herbs that we use with water for healing, and that these herbs are nurturing us. And then with the suit of fire, for example, she talks about the suit of fire being about play and activity, and these are herbs that we gather and we create with. So the meaning behind the herbs is not just their therapeutic properties, it's also sort of looking at them as archetypes and looking at them as how they are in nature and how we work with them. So what we bring in, so for example, crafting using our hands, playing, really getting into the plant, the nature, and that aspect of it could be a fire aspect or it could be earth aspect. So this is really wonderful. I'm learning so much, and I'm really appreciating the way this deck is organized. And I think that in a way, looking at the herbs in a different perspective, that's what this book and this deck has given me. Not just looking at them as like, okay, so what is this herb good for and what can it do for me? But looking at it as like more holistically, looking at the plant itself, how does it behave in nature? How does it behave with my body? And also, how do I cultivate its gifts, its healing gifts, its medicine? That's the way, if that makes sense, that's the way they've structured the deck. And I just love that. So I'm really enjoying reading this one as well. And then the next one I'm reading is my Star Tarot guidebook. And this one it's a very, very, very deep and spiritual guidebook. I love the deck. I just love the deck. I mean, I love the images of the cards. I don't have it here to show you. The images are just so colorful and so vibrant. But what I love about the guidebook is that it's written with a really, really just deeply spiritual, non-dualistic language. And, you know, it really speaks to my soul, and it speaks to how I connect with spirit. It speaks to the messages I get from spirit. I find that it's a very, very complete book. It talks about really all facets. It talks about the symbolism of numbers, for example. There's a whole section on each card for the minor arcana. You have about a page and a half or 2 pages just about the number itself, and then it's categorized. The numbers are separately categorized, so all the 5s, all the 6s, and it goes into the symbolism of each of the suits and how they're related astrologically, how each card is what astrological sign it corresponds to, and the decans for the minor arcana. And you know, I love that. And then one thing I really love, and I haven't found this with any of my decks. I know that there are decks out there, but I don't have any decks where the cards are linked to moon phases. Now, I know there is a deck which is on my wish list, the Journey to Egypt Tarot, a beautiful tarot deck with an amazing guidebook that I would love to have. It's on my wish list, but it's kind of pricey, so I have to wait to be able to save enough money for that deck. But I know in that deck, the creators, they do use, or is it just one creator? I think the woman who is the artist, she also makes the deck. She does use moon phase correspondences to the cards. However, I think she follows a different system. So in this deck, the Star Tarot, we have the astrological moon phases, so the 8 phases. And I think in the Journey to Egypt Tarot, I don't have that deck, so don't quote me, but from what I saw in the reviews, they wrote on the card, it says something like 10 days before the new moon, or I don't know how many days before the new moon. I didn't see that it uses the actual phases like balsamic phase, gibbous moon, disseminating moon. And I'm really interested in that because I'm studying, as I told you in another video, I'm studying the moon phases right now, really diving deep into them. And I also want to create a series on that subject, which is coming up on this channel, hopefully. So I'm kind of, researching. I'm in the incubation mode right now, researching and gaining knowledge and insight. So I love this book because it goes through the moon phases and how they connect to each tarot card. And I love that because when I was learning the moon phases with Brian Clark, the astrologer Brian Clark, as he was talking, I remember I was thinking of certain tarot cards for the phases. And so when I saw this, I thought, wow, that's perfect. That just goes it's so in alignment with my studies. So that's one thing I love about this deck. And in general, I want to talk about this deck another time in another video, because this is just dedicated to the guidebook, not the cards. But I'm absolutely loving that deck. I think it's definitely one of my soul decks. So those are just the guidebooks that I'm reading right now. Not really too many more. I don't like to focus on too many guidebooks at the same time, or too many decks at the same time, because I like to dedicate my time to what I'm focusing my attention on, so I can get the most out of what I need to know. So the next on the list that I wanted to share with you is a book, an actual book. And this is kind of funny, because what I've done is something I haven't done before, but it's really working for me. So the book is called the Feeling Good Handbook. And by the way, I'm going to put all the books that I've talked about in the description menu for you, so you can have the actual names of them. So this book, the Feeling Good Handbook, there's a book and there's a handbook, is by David Burns. He's a psychologist, and this is a cognitive behavioral therapy book. It was recommended to me by my psychologist that I've been seeing for anxiety. And, for the past 7 years or so, I've been reading books, CBT, mindfulness, cognitive behavioral therapy approach for anxiety. I've read so many different kinds of books on pain and mindfulness for pain, CBT for chronic pain, because I do deal with chronic pain, and anxiety. And I've been reading so many different books, but I haven't come across a book that has been so well structured, so simple, so clear, so many exercises. Now this is the handbook again, because the book itself I think is really scientific and kind of hard to understand, and really for psychologists and psychiatrists. But this is actually for just a layperson, and there's exercises throughout the book. Now I want to talk about what I've done here, which is something different. The book itself, when it came from Amazon, when I got it in the mail, it was literally this thick. Okay? And so I'm the kind of person, when I see a book this thick, I think, especially if it's about anxiety, okay? If it's something like that, something that's not fun, not like tarot or something that I really want to, have fun reading, but it's something that I feel like I have to do as an exercise. So when I saw the book, I kind of panicked a little bit, like, how the hell am I going to read that book? I was intimidated by how thick it was. It was just like, there's no way I'm reading that. I'm not touching that book. So then I thought, what am I going to do? What's the thing to do? Like, photocopy it? It's like, this thick. So I thought, maybe I should just rip it into small parts. Rip it all into parts. And I thought, no, I can't, part of me was like, you can't do that. You just paid $30 for that book. So what are you going to do? Rip it apart? And, I thought, you know what? This is a book that I read because I need it. I need the information in there. I didn't just buy it to make it sit on the shelf to look at it. It's not a novelty book. This is a book I want to use. This is a workbook, right? So I'm going to rip it up. So I went ahead and ripped it up into like little sections like this. So I have little booklets. See? Little booklet. Can you see how? There are like just a bunch every few chapters. I rip it up and I have numbered on them so I know where they go. So when I'm finished, I'm going to put it all together. And already I've done quite a few chapters. And it's been so much fun doing it this way. It actually became interesting. And this book has exercises. Like, as you go along, almost every page, there's exercises, things that you do, journals, so it's very interactive. And so I like the fact that I did this and I treated it as not so precious, and it actually taught me a lesson. It taught me that when I get an object, a thing like a book, and I'm buying it to use it, why not use it? And who cares if it's all into different parts? Because the perfectionist part of me was like, no, you can't do that. What do you mean? You can't rip the book apart? And it's like, well, why not? I'm going to do it. So it's actually been very helpful doing this. And I highly recommend it because it was such a freeing experience to not have to care to keep a book together. And it's like, again, this is for my use, right? And I would have not read it. I would have not gotten much out of it if it was all this thick book sitting on my shelf. My sister-in-law, she's the opposite of me. She likes really thick, big books because she wants to like soak into it. She's like, I just don't want it to finish when it's so good. And I get that, and I'm like that probably with a really, really juicy book that I'm into. But a book like this, like I said, about anxiety, another story. So yes, this book it's amazing. I mean, it's so helpful. The exercises, I've been doing the journaling, the daily mood log, as he calls it, and it's just so amazing to see your thoughts, to see the pattern of your thoughts, and it's helping me so much. There's so many different sections in here. There's sections on all kinds of things, not just anxiety, but there's sections on good communication, on managing anger, on procrastination, on dealing with death, fear of death, all kinds of fears, anxieties. This book is just the Bible of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. And I know that psychologists and psychiatrists actually use this book and the exercises in this book with their patients. So now that I'm reading this book, I'm actually I'm not only learning, but I'm understanding the language of psychology a lot better. And when I go to my appointments, my therapy appointments with my psychologist, when she talks, it's like I pick up on things. It's like, oh, she just said emotional reasoning. Oh, she just said overgeneralization. Oh, she just said black and white thinking. It's like, I know what these things are now. I'm learning about them, and it's really, really great. Like, out of all the books that I have ever read, all the books that have ever been recommended to me, hands down, this book is the book. This is the book that anyone who is interested in getting a book on anxiety or any of those things I mentioned honestly needs to get, because you wouldn't regret it. It's amazing. But the thing is, it's work. You have to put in the work. That's the thing. If you're someone who is suffering with anxiety like me, it's like there comes a point where you're just thinking, well, either I have to live like this with the anxiety and suffer from it this much, or I have to do something about it. I have to learn to live with it in a more balanced way, or I guess in a healthier way, because the anxiety itself never completely goes away, right? I mean, everybody has anxiety. Anxiety is something that we all have. It's just that when it gets to a point like severe anxiety, when it interferes with the way of your life, that's when we need to do something about it. And we can seek help through therapy, and if we do therapy and work on ourselves with the tools that therapists suggest, it's really something that takes a lot of work. It really takes persistence, not giving up, keep just doing it. And I do feel better, I must say. And I do definitely, I can attest that the exercises do help me, but it's a struggle. I mean, those of you who deal with anxiety, if you're watching this, you know what I'm talking about. It's pretty serious. Anxiety and depression, by the way, this book also covers depression. It's a huge challenge for us. One thing I wanted to share with you is I got this crystal, or the stone, in the summertime. A friend of mine bought this for me, and this is, I don't know if you can see this. I guess you can't really see it, but I'll try. It's a malachite azurite combination, and I feel so healing when I hold it. So I know that azurite is one that corresponds with the planet Jupiter, and it's really a great crystal to work with when we want to change our patterns of belief, the core beliefs. And so I've programmed this crystal that every time I touch it, I remind myself that I'm learning to handle a little bit of anxiety so that I can become more emotionally resilient. I'm building resilience for anxiety and pain. In my case, it's mostly physical pain, but it could be any kind of pain. So that's what I've programmed with this crystal, and it's a really great reminder. Like, I have it resting on this my desk, my working desk, where I see it. Usually it rests on my pile of ripped up chapters from David Byrne's amazing book, and it just sits there to kind of infuse the reading. And I'm finding it really helpful, actually. But it's a practice. It's a practice. It's a consistent practice. Something we have to stick to and be persistent. So if any of you out there are suffering with anxiety or depression, my heart goes out to you. Really, really does. And just know that you are not alone, and there are many, 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 many people suffering from anxiety and depression, and there is a way to get through it. So I'm sticking to my practice, and I hope that you got inspired in some way by me sharing this information, or all of this that I shared with you. I do always enjoy my time with you, and I love reading your comments, so please tell me what you think, what your thoughts are, and like I said, I will link all the books in the description menu here. And as always, I'm sending you lots of love and many blessings, many kisses. Take care. Talk to you soon. Thank you for watching. Bye.